to the Woman Witness podcast on the Woman Witness TV network. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to our 12 episodes of December. With 12 inspiring women, with 12 inspiring stories, we cannot wait to gift you a gift that continues to keep giving throughout the month of December. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast, The Stories at the Well. This is a platform we bring to you voices of women that are out there making a positive impact in their lives, in the community, and the world around them. Today, I have a very special topic and a very special guest. So I want you to lean in because we're going to be covering some really important things such as our heart and forgiveness. So before I introduce my guest, I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit about her. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Whitney Jones, the founder and CEO of Raymond K. Jones Foundation. She focuses on the transformative power of forgiveness as the catalyst to unlock our fullest potential. Whitney inspires audiences to release resentment and embark on a journey towards inner peace. At the age of 9, on July 20th, 1998, Whitney experienced a tragic loss of her father due to gun violence. Consumed by grief, she initially harbored bitterness and resentment towards the person accountable for her father's death. 20 years later, God placed in Whitney's heart to forgive this person responsible. On August 17, 2018, she had a significant encounter with the person linked to her father's passing. This moment marked a turning point in both their lives, sparking a transformative movement. Today, Whitney leads as the founder and CEO of the Raymond K. Jones Foundation, dedicated to offering support and resources to families affected by gun violence. The foundation aims to foster healing and forgiveness by bridging the gap between the impacted families and their perpetrators. I am so pleased to introduce to you my guest today, Whitney Jones. Hey, Whitney, welcome to the well.
Hey, Leah, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
It is. I'm so glad you reached out to us, and I commend your resiliency and your bravery to come out and talk about such a sensitive topic, something that you battled through. And maybe perhaps there are a lot of people who may be in your position who are trying to figure out, when I forgive. I want to just start by giving you the floor. I read a little bit about your story, but you are going to share with us some of the details behind it. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey and the motivation behind bridging that gap between families impacted by gun violence and those
Yeah,
responsible?
yeah, absolutely. Well, like you stated, it pretty much all started with July 20th, 1998. I was only 9 years old at the time, and I remember my mom had woke me and my brother up. It was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she said that it was an emergency and that we needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. So I vividly remember us driving on the highway. It's pouring down, raining, and we finally make it to the hospital, and we're greeted by the doctor and the chaplain. So they probably spoke to my mom all of 30, 45 seconds, and then they immediately took her into a separate room. I later found out that at that time she was identifying my father's body. He had already passed away due to one gunshot wound to the chest, and they just basically needed her to positively identify him. And I just remember her coming out of the room and she gave me this look, this motherly look of, how am I going to tell my two kids that their father is gone? And I think just due to the shock, she didn't show any immediate emotions. Um, and it wasn't until we actually made it back home that she sat me and my brother down and she explained what happened. And I would say the last memory I have of that night was me and my mom and my brother literally crying ourselves to sleep.
Uh,
And I think that was the first pivotal moment in my life, losing my dad, who was my best friend and literally a piece of me. that's where it all started for me. I feel like that changed the trajectory of my life for sure. Because my dad
Yeah.
was such a part and piece of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, growing up was tough. Like you had mentioned, I harbored a lot of anger,
Hmm.
resentment, and bitterness towards the woman responsible for his death, and I carried that for years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like my early 20s that I dedicated my life to Christ.
Yeah.
I got baptized,
Oh,
and me and God's relationship began to build. So
yeah.
I went into this phase where I was obsessed with trying to find out what my purpose was. I think we're
Mm.
all kind of guilty of that. Like,
Absolutely.
what is my
Yeah.
purpose?
Yep. What are you here
What
for?
am I here for? Like,
Right. Hmm.
especially the lifestyle that I was living, going
Yeah.
out partying all every weekend. And I was
Yeah.
like, this just can't be it for me.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember praying each and every night, like, Lord, can you reveal to me what my purpose was?
Mm.
And it was silence. I got crickets for years.
Yeah.
Um, and I understand it because the way I was living my life wasn't aligned with what God had called me to do.
Yeah.
And so he needed those years of maturity
Yep.
before I was able to get to that point where he could actually reveal it to me and I was
Correct.
going to be able to use it.
Receive it. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yep.
so it wasn't until my late 20s he finally answered me and he said, I need you to forgive the woman that killed your father. Just like that. And
And
I
for
was
some of
like,
us, we're like, we don't want to hear that.
I was like,
This must not be
how
God.
God, I said, how God asks us stuff
Yeah.
and we have follow-up questions like, well, Lord, why now?
Is this you?
Why
Right.
this?
Yeah. Girl, I've been there.
So I definitely had a lot of follow-up questions,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and I was like, okay. So then I was obedient. I
Yeah.
was, I trusted, what his request was, and I just was obedient.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. I got her information from my mom. She was currently at the Madison Correctional Facility, still serving her sentence.
Mm.
And I sat down with my mom and my grandma, and I simply told them, I think I'm ready to forgive Deborah.
Yeah.
And they were in shock, like, wow, because for years I said, I don't want anything to do with her.
Yeah.
I'll probably never forgive her in my life because she took a very important piece of me away. And I
Yeah.
don't think I could ever forgive somebody who has done that to me.
Now, did you
And
know her, Whitney?
no, no, I didn't know. I think when I was younger, they told me her name
Yeah.
and they told me that she would be serving she ended up getting sentenced to 51 years in prison when she ultimately only served 21 years. So the only information I had about her was her name, but I never knew
Never
what she
met her.
looked like. I never met her. My mom, of course, did when she was going through the whole court process.
Yeah.
But as far as my brother, we had never been able to put a face to the name.
Mm.
Um, so I was actually
That's
blindly
heartbreaking.
writing this woman that I never met.
Yeah.
And I just introduced myself. And I said, hey, I'm Whitney Jones. I'm the daughter
Mm.
of Raymond K. Jones. And I'm at a place in my life where I would love to meet you. I would love to, kind of get your side of the story because growing up, I feel like that was a missing piece for me.
Mm.
I heard pieces of what had happened that night, but I didn't know the events that led up to it, like why
Yeah.
it actually happened.
Yeah.
And so I got to a place where I was like, well, the only person who can really give me that information is probably her. And
Absolutely.
so I was excited just to get some answers. So
Yeah.
I voiced all of that in my letter, and we communicated for a few months. We did
She
that
wrote
back and
back.
forth for a few months. Yep, she wrote back immediately.
Mm.
And she simply said, you don't need any introduction. I already know who you are. I already know your name. And I know everything about you. And this is something I've been praying for is for you and your family to reach out to me and want to extend that forgiveness to me.
Oh,
So
God.
this is something she had prayed over the 21 years that she was in prison was simply just to get the forgiveness from me and my family.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
you can imagine what was going on in her head to receive
Yeah.
that letter from me. Like,
Yeah.
Lord, thank you.
Can I say this? Imagine I look at it
Yes,
like this, imagine our physically being in a prison, but also being in a prison in your mind because she was also held captive, waiting for your forgiveness. And who would you have ever thought that you had the key to set her free?
I had no idea. And it kind of all made sense when I go
Mm,
back to that moment where God asked me to forgive her. And I didn't really understand why, because I was at a place where I had accepted, that my father was gone. There was no way I was
yeah,
bringing him back. And I felt like, to a certain extent, I had already forgiven her in my heart because I knew
right,
that's what I was supposed to do.
right.
And so I didn't know the extent of it. I was like, well, Lord, I've already
I
done
already did
that.
it. She's good.
But
I'm good.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
good. I'm moving on with my life.
right, right, girl.
Whenever
I know.
whenever she's released, yeah,
Yeah,
whenever she's released, I wish her the best.
yeah.
That was my thought process on it.
Mm. Oh, I know that
But God,
so well. Sorry. Come
but
on.
we all know God had other plans. And the
Mm,
more I got to know her, the more she revealed herself to me, it all started to make sense of
yeah,
why he asked me to do this. And I want to go ahead and fast forward to August 17, 2018. Me, my mom, and her childhood friend had met at Madison Correctional Facility.
yeah.
And if I had to describe that visit in one word, it was powerful.
Really?
I not only got the answers that I needed, but it gave me the ultimate closure that I needed to be able to really live at peace about what had happened.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I remember leaving that prison, and my mom asked me, "How do you feel?" And I said, "I feel so much lighter." Um, and it's like 10 to 20 pounds had been lifted off of my shoulders in that very moment.
Wow.
And I truly believe that's when my pain was transformed into purpose.
Come on, Whitney. Come on. So you're saying all that anger and that resentment that you thought was done, over with. You already put it behind you. You like, what is it? What else is there left to say? You were still secretly carrying or unknowingly carrying it.
Exactly. And that's one thing I learned about forgiveness. Sometimes we hold on to it for so long that we don't even realize we're
Don't.
carrying it.
Come on. I didn't realize it's there.
You don't even realize it's there. And it may just take that one thing that triggers it to come out of you. And you're like, oh, wait,
You
it is still there.
You having a
I,
whole episode,
you have a whole episode.
depression, anxiety, everything. Oh, I've been there. You're like, where's this coming from? I can't stop crying for no reason. Oh, there's reason.
For no reason.
There's reason. Wow. Yeah, you're
It
right.
is.
I have a question for you. So when you walked out and you said you got to the point where you turn your pain into purpose. What was that next step? What did that look like?
So, literally on the drive back home to Indianapolis, Indiana, it was probably about an hour and 20-minute drive.
Hmm.
Me and my mom began to feel like a shift. And we truly believe it was the Holy Spirit began to speak to me and my mom on ways that we can honor my dad, but also that could help impact other families.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
he began to fuel us with different ideas. And that's when the idea of us starting the nonprofit organization was birthed.
Wow.
And probably about a year later, we officially launched March 2020.
Wow.
And we now provide support and resources to families who have been impacted by gun violence.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Can I just highlight a few things? I want everybody to listen because this is what I hear you saying. I hear you saying that not only was your next step, your next level, your revelation was literally locked up in your unforgiveness. You had to free Deborah, and by freeing Deborah, you freed yourself and the vision that God had in store for you. So many times, and I can attest to this, and I might need to go back and take a look at my own book, okay? And realize that so many times our unanswered prayers are locked in our unforgiveness. And I used to think that my unforgiveness was, I'm good, right? You say, I'm good. I forgive that person. I didn't think that they really need to hear it. I really, and sometimes I'll say it, but then it turns into like a whole argument, and you be like, "Hey, I'm done with it. I'm just gonna leave this
Yeah,
alone," right? But you still mad
but you're
secretly.
still mad. Yeah.
Mm.
And you know how they always say about forgiveness, where, and I do believe this to be true, that forgiveness is really to free yourself. But in my specific situation, it was not only to free myself, but also the other person that brought that harm to me. And so sometimes forgiveness is tricky. Sometimes you can't be selfish and say, "Oh, well, if I forgive this person, what am I going to get out of it?" I don't want any good to happen to that person from me forgiving them. So, yeah, we have to definitely take ourselves out of that selfish state and just say, I'm not only forgiving this person to free myself, but also to hopefully free them from whatever they're battling and whatever they've been traumatized from that maybe caused them to hurt me out of a reaction of something they've been through.
Yes.
So
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, so share with us some of the biggest challenges you faced during this process, and how did you overcome them? How did you overcome it? What lessons did you learn from them?
throughout this whole process, I would say I did experience a lot of guilt. And
Mm,
that guilt came from feeling like I was betraying my dad.
mm,
When I started this journey of forgiveness, it everything was lined up right, everything felt right, and I knew that's what God had called me to truly do. But then there was the back of me that was like, if I forgive this woman, will my dad forgive me? You
mm.
know, will he think that I betrayed him?
Yeah.
And I'm going to share with you guys, this is the first time I'm actually sharing this, but I had a dream shortly after having that feeling. And me and Deborah were at the mall. I don't know why we were at the mall, but we were sitting at a bench,
Uh-huh.
and my dad walks up and he says, "Hey, you," trying to get Deborah's attention.
Yeah.
And she stood up and looked at him, and he just embraced her and gave her the biggest hug I think he's ever given to anybody.
Wow.
And when I woke up from that dream, I was like, he's forgiven her.
Yeah.
He's forgiven her. So
Yeah.
that gives me the permission to extend that forgiveness as well.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Wow. Did you share that
Yes.
with her just out of curiosity?
I have not.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And
That
that's
was for
something,
you. It was for you. That was for
maybe
you.
it was for me.
That was for you. That was for you. I love that, Whitney. I really do. And I do believe in the power that God will talk to you in anywhere, in any place. And I do, okay, I will say this, that guilt is real. And I believe that's, that's our feelings, right? That we're entitled to them. And that guilt of, feeling as if you let that person down, or even if you let yourself down, if you are a victim yourself of anything that you can't forgive. Or you're having a tough time over forgiving, that guilt of you saying, if I forgive this person, I'm showing that I'm weak, or I can't, I get it, and I love what you're saying about that. Pray about it. Let God reveal to you, and He will reveal to you that it's okay. It's my will. He
Yes. And
wills it.
that's usually what I recommend people do when they want to start this journey of forgiveness. The
Yeah.
first thing you do is pray to God and be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Ask God to give you a forgiving spirit and a
Mm.
forgiving heart, because
Yeah.
you're going to have that first to be able to genuinely forgive somebody who's hurt you. It's
Yeah.
not just something you throw up in the air and say, "Oh, I forgive you. Let's move on."
Yeah.
No, you have to dig deep,
You do.
and you may have to even revisit that pain
Mm.
to even to recover from it.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
don't want to do that. It's
Yeah.
easier to cover it up and leave it down in there.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
and you'll have to bring that to the surface if you
Yeah.
want to be able to really embrace this journey of forgiveness. You're going to have to hit some areas that may still be painful,
Yeah.
but I guarantee you, once you come out on the other side, you're going to have so much peace, you're going to have so much joy, and you may even discover another purpose
Purpose.
from doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that 110%. Now, when you talk about purpose, talk to us about what that means to live that fulfilled life after experiencing such a profound loss.
Yes. So for me, I would say while I was going through my journey of praying to God for what was my purpose,
Yeah.
I never envisioned it being this.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, my person, I'm going to be like a doctor and I'm going to heal the sick.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I just had these big dreams of
Mm.
what ideally a purpose would look like.
Yeah.
But never in a million years would I think my purpose would come from losing my best friend and
Mm.
losing literally a piece of me.
Yeah.
And now I just have this passion for wanting to help other families navigate through that.
Yeah.
Because I know back in 1998, my family didn't really have the support or the
Yeah.
resources to really get through that.
Yeah.
So here I was, 9 years old, having to learn how to grieve because I had never really lost anybody in my family to know
Yeah.
what grief really felt like.
Yeah.
And so, and my mom didn't think to say, maybe my son and my daughter might need therapy.
Therapy.
They just lost their father in a
Yeah.
traumatic way.
Yeah.
So, I don't ever fault her for not, extending that. But,
Yeah. We don't know.
so now we don't know, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
And so growing up, I always said in the back of my mind that I always wanted to do something in honor of my dad, but
Yeah.
I also want to help other families who were impacted and be able to be that support and resource that
Yeah.
I didn't have when I was
Yeah.
9 years old. So
Yes.
that's what purpose looks like after losing somebody that was a monumental person in your life, is
Mm.
being able to really take that pain and transfer it into purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I love that so much. I want to point out, if you will, I want to talk about gun violence, right? Especially in America. For whatever reason, gun violence, it's a touchy subject. No one really wants to talk about it, but I think it is a topic that we need to talk about, and that there need to be stricter laws on, and there need to be, follow-up system or something. I mean, I did a little research, and I'm pretty sure you can share with us a lot more about it. But like I looked, according to CDC, the recent years, firearms were involved in 39,000 deaths annually in the United States, and around 100,000 Americans are shot or injured each year, according to, what is this, the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence. Talk to us about how your foundation is tied and pushing forward an effort to combat gun violence.
So, my organization, we are like the back end of it. We want to be able to help families, in the aftermath.
Okay.
Because there are a ton of organizations that are all about politics and changing the gun laws and trying
Yeah.
to prevent the crime from happening in the
In the
beginning.
first place,
And
right?
exactly. But
Mm.
we're on the side of being there for the families after the fact.
Yeah.
Because what we tend to see is, you see this news coverage of people getting killed each and every day. And, your heart goes
Yeah.
out to the families. But then, the next day, you're going about your day,
Absolutely.
and that family is still left to grieve.
Mm.
And
That's
that
good.
family is still left to pick up the pieces once that person is gone. We want to be that comfort to families after the fact.
Yeah.
If it's nothing but 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years later, we
Mm.
want to be there. And we want to be able to provide that long term support for families, or even if they want to just come in to one of our grief support sessions. Anything can help. So I
Mm.
would have to say, not necessarily on the front end with trying
Yeah.
to change the laws, and I don't think that's necessarily what we've been called to do. But
Yeah.
we're here for the aftermath, and we want families to know that you're not alone. We went through the exact same thing, and we're going to help each other make it through this. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing with us.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. And you're absolutely right. You made a very good point. Now, after the tragedy has happened, now what? Now what for these families? I love that. And I think what you're doing is Absolutely amazing. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about how you and Deborah have partnered together in this initiative?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So once Deborah was released from prison, she
Okay.
actually reached out to me and my mom and said that she basically wanted to continue the connection we had. We wanted to build something on that,
Wow.
because her vision was to actually help the youth and the juveniles and
Mm,
hopefully create some type of conflict resolution so that they don't end up where she ended up.
mm,
And so that's kind
mhm.
of where it started. And
Yeah,
I said, well, Deborah, why don't you join our team? So I actually added her as one of my board of directors. Um, and she's basically over our prison and redemption outreach program. And so what our plan is to go inside the prisons and the juvenile centers and create some type of a conflict resolution program. But also we want to put emphasis on our power of forgiveness story behind it all. And so they'll be able to see her perspective, someone who, committed a crime, served time for it. And then you have the compassionate side with me, the family member who was impacted by this crime. So they can see like the full picture that when you go out and commit these crimes, just know there's a ton of people that are impacted by that one person being gone. And I don't think people actually realize that. Um, so yeah, that's our plan, to travel the world, share our story, and ultimately what we want to do is ignite hope between perpetrators and families to promote healing and forgiveness. So that's our goal.
that is huge, Whitney. Huge. Huge. You are promoting forgiveness. You are setting those who are in prison free, not just physically, but in their mind, so they can be released from that pain and that guilt and begin to turn it into purpose. Doesn't matter. And you have proven that anyone who is listening, whether they are behind bars or not, or held in captivity, they can still walk in their purpose just by being released from that guilt and that shame that they may carry. And kudos to you for leading this. I'm sorry. I'm just overwhelmed with you, and you're I need I need we all need to lean in. I'm so serious. I think, and I'm so moved by this because it for any of us who have battled any type of trauma in our lives, it is so important to let go and to forgive. It is so important to let go and forgive, because I think what you have really drilled in today in our conversation is that sometimes our next assignment is wrapped up in our unforgiveness, held up, literally just held right there. And until we forgive that person who hurt us, God cannot bring us to our next assignment, because we're going to bring all that baggage into it. And we're going to be the one hurting people. Mm, Whitney. Girl, look, I got to go to my list of people now. Ugh, I don't have a list, people, but I do have a few. Okay. But you're right. I mean, girl, listen, I'm talking to myself. I love it. I love it. I love what you're doing, Whitney. Thank you for that. What advice would you give to any individuals or organizations seeking to foster forgiveness in similar contexts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to actually give you all a few steps of how you can actually start your forgiveness journey.
Yes.
So the first thing you want to do is acknowledge your pain.
Mm,
So accept that you have been hurt and recognize the pain and its impact on your life.
yeah.
And so step two would be identify what needs forgiving. I think clearly understanding what the person did that caused you pain, being specific can help process some of those emotions.
Mm,
So I think that's going to be the big part of it. You have to be able to dig deep and find out what actually happened in your life that caused so much pain and who caused the pain, because that's the person that you're going to have to actually extend that forgiveness to.
yeah.
And if that person is still in your life, step three is going to be set boundaries. between
Yeah.
you and that person until you're at a space where you can genuinely forgive them. And then you don't want to bring any harm onto yourself, too, especially if that person has physically harmed you.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you set those boundaries in place.
Hmm.
And I would say, like, the fourth step would be seek support, whether that's through family, friends, through a therapist. Anybody that can help facilitate your forgiveness process is going to be crucial.
Yeah.
I wish I honestly had that through my process, and I didn't. I had to kind of navigate it on my own.
Yeah.
But there are professionals out there that can help you
Yeah.
navigate this journey. And the last step, number five, would be just commit to the process. Understand
Yeah.
that forgiveness is a journey. It may take some time, and that's okay. But be patient with yourself. And I
Yes.
would say those are some takeaways to help you navigate that journey of forgiveness. I understand everybody's journey is going to be different.
Yeah.
Mine might look totally different from yours. You might not want to set one foot in the same room as somebody that's hurt you, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Just know that that's okay. But
Yeah.
at least get to a place where if that person's name is brought up, it doesn't trigger you or bring you
Mm,
back to that pain.
mm,
And
mm.
even after you forgive that person, if something triggers you and it brings that pain, forgive them again. You might have to forgive them 4 or 5 times before you get to a place where it's like, oh, I hear Deborah's name and I'm at peace about it.
Yeah.
And that's when you know you've made it through that journey.
What does the Bible say? Forgive seven. Is seven? Was it 70 times 7? Is that how many times?
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like, oh Lord, I don't know. That's a
Yeah. That's a lot.
lot. Turn the other cheek.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. It's crazy. You gotta forgive people before they even do anything to you. That's
Yeah.
how far ahead of it that you need to be.
Yeah.
And I just love that forgiveness is just a lifestyle for me now. I think, me forgiving the unforgivable has set the bar so high
Mm,
that anything that comes my way, I'm automatically forgiving the situation.
my
Because
God.
I know how hard it was to harbor all those feelings for 20 years. And
Mm.
I know I don't ever want to carry that weight again because
Mm.
unforgiveness is heavy.
It's heavy. It is
It's
very heavy.
heavy.
It is
And you
very
don't
heavy. I agree.
realize it until you're freed from it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's
Yes.
what I really want to push and encourage people to be intentional,
Yeah.
commit to the journey, and I guarantee you that once you make it through that journey, it will restore your peace, your joy, and your purpose.
Your peace, your joy, and your purpose. I love it so much, Whitney. You have came and you have enlightened us. I want everybody. I think if I could just say this, I want everybody to think about that person, or if that person is still alive, as Whitney said, pick up the phone and maybe give them a call, or write it down. Write it down. If you can't call them, write it down. Write it down. But journal it, and keep journaling until you're able, until God helps you break that yoke. Tell us where to find your organization, and maybe if we want to partner with you, or uh, donate, or any way, shape, form, or fashion to help your initiative. How can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.rkjfoundation.org.
Mm.
We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram.
Mhm.
On Facebook, it should be under Raymond K. Jones Foundation.
Okay.
And on Instagram, we're at the RKJ Foundation.
Okay. And also, we will leave it in the description below. So if you want to, we encourage you to follow her organization. If you know someone who may be able to benefit from her organization, maybe someone who's just kind of stuck in that place and needs a little help, it's okay. Please follow her, reach out to her organization and her foundation, and they will definitely get in touch with you. Okay, Whitney, before I let you go, I want you to leave us with some motivation. Leave us with something to take with us throughout the week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to actually leave you all with a quote by Sherry Carter Scott. Anger makes you smaller, while forgiveness forces you to grow beyond what you are. So I want to encourage anyone who's in the process of starting your forgiveness journey to give yourself grace, be intentional, and commit to the process. And like I had stated before, I guarantee that once you have extended that forgiveness, it will restore your peace and your joy and your purpose. And I look forward to hearing all the testimonies that come from this specific episode. I know this message is probably directed to a lot of you. And so I want you to dig deep and really be intentional about getting to that peace because it's well worth it and you deserve it.
Mm, and you deserve it. Come on. That's okay. I love it so much, Whitney. Yes, please leave all your testimony stories in here, please. Absolutely. If you were blessed by this episode and you know someone else who needs to hear it, please send it over to them. Whitney, now have you written a book yet?
No, but I know it's coming.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
Okay,
and so I'm in
we'll
the
talk
process of
about
trying
that.
to write down.
We
Okay.
need to talk about that. We got to get a book out there, get it in people's hands so people can have it to look in front of them, just to give themselves a reminder. Or you can always come back to this episode or reach out to Whitney and her foundation. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast of Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. Thank you, my special guest, Whitney Jones. Thank you for joining us and pouring here at this well today. I was blessed by this in full, and I'm praying that many, many, many more women and men will be full and blessed by this episode as well. For joining us on another episode of the Woman Witness Podcast on Woman Witness TV Network. Perhaps you were chosen for such a time as this to write, to tell your story, your truth. Until next time.